Here we are now, 5 years after that CPTPP came in force, 2 years after there's been a change in government in the United States. And it's a really opportune time for us to kind of reevaluate the future of the Indo-Pacific economic order, for us to look at whether or not it is possible to find a path forward.
I am a believer in the agreement, and I know that in many other trade agreements, including in the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, many provisions of the CPTPP were just lifted and folded into the USMCA. So even if the United States is not part of this agreement, we're still advocates of many of the rules contained in the agreement. Recently, I published a paper. We note in our paper that things have changed since 2017. First, the US, with unprecedented bipartisan support from Congress, passed the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. Second, the region has changed. There are two now. The CPTPP came into effect without the United States, with the UK on the verge of joining. The RCEP is just celebrated its first year entry into force. The United States is on the outside of these deals. And finally, the United States has done a lot domestically, I would argue, to address many of the concerns of skeptics of trade and globalization through much of the major legislation that has been passed by the Biden administration. So my view is it's time for us to reconsider. And in our paper, we suggest that there are ways that the agreement can be updated, modernized, improved to address some lingering U.S. concerns.
When you combine the impact of the East-West tensions, the war in Ukraine, with some of these challenges of domestic governance, we are seeing ever more the advent of coalitions or clubs of like-minded countries. So we're seeing the advent of what you might call mini-lateralism. My initial message is put the CPTPP into slightly broader context. Don't forget the importance of development assistance, infrastructure investment, and domestic governance as absolute necessary accompaniments to further trade liberalization. My understanding is among the members, most all are quite committed to what you might call a merit-based approach to new adherents or applicants. Merit meaning open to those who can demonstrate both a willingness and a commitment to meet the high standards of the agreement.
CPTPP, of course, is at the forefront. It's not just as an ambitious multilateral trade framework, but it is also the foundation of developing the future of an economic order in the Indo-Pacific, which is going through a great deal of change. In the United States, the focus is much more about winning against China and being able to withstand economic coercion from authoritarian regimes, as well as from unexpected shocks and disruptions. US national security interests are increasingly driving trade policy. And meanwhile, in Japan, the broader economic goal is to be resilient to external shocks. And there is a focus on having greater domestic self-sufficiency, and for Japan to be essential to the global economy and hone in on its strengths. Those goals certainly align with that of the United States, and there is greater scope for cooperation between the two countries. CPTPP could and should be the foundation for furthering the economic partnership.
I feel that the pressure is on the system as a whole against rules. We're seeing instead a bifurcation of trade, offense. Our response to a potentially bifurcated world is to be inclusive. You've used the term Indo-Pacific in your discussion. Both Japan and America does. Many countries in ASEAN don't, but where they do, it is the ASEAN outlook for the Indo-Pacific, which is not values, not exclusive, but inclusive. And I think this is the kind of spirit that we're trying to bring to these other agendas. There are many things to be done in our region. I think that the post-pandemic attitude of growth is still very needful. I think that there's a lot to play for in our region. The question is, how do we do this in tandem with different partners, but also amongst ourselves in a period of tension and potential conflict?